So can everybody see it clearly? All right. So thank you all so much for being here. So this is the Art of Relationships, and thank you very much for having me come to speak today. So I know that some of you guys said more personal relationships, and then several of you guys also said more on the professional side. So I'll try to touch on a little bit of both, but they're so interconnected that I think it won't be too much of a problem. All right, so yeah, I already said I'm Zachariah Bourne, and I've been at this for a while. So let's go ahead and get into it. So why are relationships important? Why are relationships important? So that's something that comes up a lot, and that's why I want to share with you guys before we really get into the ideas. I want to tell you why they're important. So the people around us, they significantly shape our lives. So our romantic partner, our parents, our children, our coworkers, our friends, our relationships, they do so much in our life. They teach us invaluable lessons, they influence the way we see the world, and they also mold our personalities. So whether it's personal, professional, relationships really matter. And also, no journey to greatness or toward happiness is walked in solitude. So we really want to strengthen our relationships, but often we're never really even taught why we should have relationships or how to make our relationships thrive. But here are some little benefits of relationships that you can check out. So there's a study in 2018 talking about how people with satisfying relationships actually live longer and healthier lives. And it helps you so much with networking. It helps you with your overall life satisfaction. Your relationships are so important. And there are really specific things that you can do to improve your relationships that very few people even know or use in their day-to-day life. And even recently, I was watching a TED Talk talking about relationships and how, well, actually, it was the TED Talk was on how to live longer. And they noticed that the biggest factors, the two biggest factors when it came to living the longest, it wasn't alcohol, it wasn't quitting smoking, it wasn't diet, it wasn't exercise, it wasn't nutrition, it wasn't all these things that we thought it would be. The factor that made the biggest difference in our longevity and health was relationships. So you can even see on this graph, social integration and close relationships made the biggest difference for living longer and healthier life. So relationships matter a lot. So let's go ahead and start talking about some things that can really help benefit our relationships. So let me ask you, how many of you guys believe that all relationships provide some form of benefit into our life? Now, how many of you guys see it that way? Because the truth is, all relationships are beneficial, all of them. So every relationship in our lives, whether it's a friend, even a tough boss, or a challenging neighbor, it serves a purpose. They're all valuable in their own unique way because they do one of two things. Either they make our life better, so like a great friend or a supportive family member, or a great partner, they make our life better in some way. Or, if we see the relationship is more of a negative experience, maybe you have like kind of a negative coworker, those help us to grow. They help us to get clear on what we want our future to be like. They help us to appreciate good people in our lives. So I think what a lot of people don't realize is how our negative relationships, people who maybe don't treat us so well, people who don't take time to understand us, they can benefit our lives sometimes even more than the people who are nice to us. So if somebody doesn't know your value, so say someone doesn't know your value, and so they're not that nice to you because of it. So you can let that experience beat you down or have a negative perspective on it, or you can have that experience help you to know in yourself your own value, your own worth. And that can be really powerful. So, say you're like an entrepreneur, or say you're in sales and you have to do something where you get a lot of rejection. But maybe you had someone growing up who never saw your worth and rejected you often. But now, as an adult, because you've had that rejection before, you don't mind getting rejections from sales. You don't mind getting, rejection um, from having failures in your business. It can really benefit you in a lot of ways. So these negative experiences and these negative people, these coworkers who aren't so kind, they help you to appreciate kindness. So I want us to all start looking at relationships as all beneficial. So they're either benefiting your life or helping you to get clear on what you want in your life and helping you to grow. So to help me grow, I have a family member when I was growing up who always used to like to negatively talk about me, never really gave me compliments. They're always saying negative things about me. But that ended up being such a blessing because it gave me so much fuel. When I was young, I was not happy and I had low self-esteem. And it gave me fuel to grow and to become a totally different person and to appreciate people who were nice and who saw my value. And so we have to really start to appreciate those people in our life who uh, haven't been so great and start seeing all relationships as beneficial. All right, so let's go on and move on to the next one. We're going to talk about the role of mirror neurons. So I don't know if you ever heard of mirror neurons. So back in the 90s, scientists started discovering a certain brain cell. This is really fascinating. And this brain cell fires when we observe someone else doing something or feeling something. We end up feeling or often doing the same thing the other person's doing. For instance, have you ever wondered why when someone smiles at you, maybe you're like in an elevator and a baby smiles at you, often you can't even help but smile back. Do you ever wonder why that is? So mirror neurons are really fascinating. It's really fascinating, new part of science that they're getting into, and has a lot of implications that are really interesting. So they also think that mirror neurons are where we get compassion from. Empathy really comes from mirror neurons. So when we feel what other people are feeling, and there's even this study, I thought this was so fascinating, at the University of California, San Diego, that found that emotions can spread through what they call social contagion. So these participants, they didn't know each other, and they're put into a room, and they noticed that the people in the room, they tended to catch the emotions and the moods of the other people in the room that they didn't even know. And so they found that happiness is actually very contagious. And so if someone is happy, they saw evidence that that happiness effect, it spread to people up to 3 degrees of separation away. So what I mean by that is it spreads. So say you're happy and that spreads to your friends. That's 1 degree. And then it spreads to your friends' friends. That's 2 degrees. And then up to 3 degrees, your friends. So you're having an impact not just on the people around you, but on the people around the people around you, and on the people around the people around you, 3 degrees away. So it's really fascinating how this works. And so the better we feel, the people around us are going to feel better. And this is massive to our relationships, both personal and professional. And you'll notice too, we can be far more productive when we encourage people and we appreciate them. So your genuine compliments to your coworkers, to people you go on dates with, to your family members, your appreciation, your happiness toward them goes much further than we realize. All right, next we're going to talk about something that I find really fascinating, and it's about how expectation influences behavior. So a lot of times we think we don't really affect the people around us that much, right? They're their own person, we're our own person. What we do or think about another person doesn't really matter, right? But this is not true at all. Our expectation is creating profound effects on the people around us. So your coworkers, your your employees, if you have a business, your everybody around you is affected by your expectation of them. And I'll talk a little bit more about the research behind this because it's really interesting. So research shows that there's a phenomenon called the Pygmalion effect. And the Pygmalion effect, if we is basically about how if we expect someone to be a certain way, we subconsciously do things to draw out those experiences and those expectations from them. So, for instance, if we think someone has a negative attitude, we're going to subconsciously do things to make them act negatively around us. And on the other side, if we think that people are, someone has a very positive attitude, this is just an example, but it goes so much deeper than this too. If we believe someone has a very positive attitude, it will really change the way they act around you. So they did this really interesting experiment called the Rosenthal experiment. And what they did is they took teachers and students and they told the teachers that these randomly selected students were intellectual bloomers. So these students were just totally random. And they told them that these are the smart kids. And these kids, even though it's totally random, we're going to do really well because they're the smart kids. They're going to do well. They're intellectual bloomers, they said. So throughout the year, these students, influenced by their teachers' increased expectations, performed significantly better than the other ones, even though they were totally random. Just because the teacher was told that these are the smart kids, they did significantly better just based on expectation. And there's another quick story. This woman was talking about how she was told by a doctor that her son, who was about to start kindergarten, might be kind of a problem child in the class. And so she told the teacher, the kindergarten teacher, before school started, hey, I was told by my doctor that my son might act out a little bit. He might not do well in this environment. And throughout that year, the teacher told the mother, he was not a very well behaved kid. He caused a lot of problems. There was a lot of issues with this kid, with your son. And, the mother's trying to like kind of punish the child and trying to do things to turn around. And so the next year she tells the teacher, hey, my son had, some behavior problems last year. And so he's causing a lot of problems in class. And so throughout that year, the child was causing a lot of problems in class again. So the same thing. And then the third year, she tells the next teacher the same thing again and again. Third year, a lot of problems in class. So anyway, she starts learning about the idea that the labels that we give people really influence them. And so we can start looking around in our own life too. What kind of labels are we giving the people around us? And so she started telling her son, you're a really good boy. You're super well behaved. You're an amazing child. You do really well in class, even though he hadn't before. But she started to really believe it and to create this expectation in herself and her son. And she told the teacher for the next year, who didn't know anything about the child, hey, my child is so well behaved. He's going to do so well in your class. Everything's going to go really great. And and so that year, the teacher by the end of the year said he's the best behaved child in class. He does so well. He's so involved in the lessons. He's like my favorite student. And so it was such a shocking difference for the mother. And she was telling the story. And I thought it was just so interesting how our perspective of people can really transform how things go around them. I even had a coworker one time, so I tried this for myself. This is many years ago, and this coworker was very negative toward me, and I decided to start seeing them in a very positive light. Like, how can I picture this person who's never said a nice thing to me ever, only negative things about me? How can I picture them totally differently? So I started picturing them exactly the way I wanted them to be, and saw them as very kind, very sweet, very loving. And I was kind of picturing myself like beaming love at this person. And it was fascinating because this was in the morning. And that day I ended up working with them. And it was so wild because they ended up coming and sitting with me at lunch that day, which had never happened before. And we ended up having the most positive conversation we've ever had. And she gave me all these compliments, which had never happened before. And it was wild. Her behavior toward me completely changed. And and we became friends after that. And it was wild because she started treating me differently than like everyone else. And so it was just so fascinating. If I hadn't seen it for myself, I would have said, "Are you sure?" But it was amazing to see the difference that our expectation can have. And I've definitely seen this in my own personal life. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next. So everybody just wants to feel good. So at our core, we're all just seeking, we want to feel good in some way. The only reason we want just about anything in our life, whether we want a new car, we want a new job, we want more money, is because we believe that it'll make us feel good. So that's kind of at the core of all this. The reason we want a new partner, or we want to get married or meet someone is because we want to feel good. And so, especially if you're using mirror neurons, um, and you start being a beacon or a source of positivity, think about how that's going to affect the people around you. So when I was in college, I didn't really like people. I mean, before college, in high school, but even when I was young, I didn't really like people until I went to college. And because I didn't really like people, people kind of didn't like me back. I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience before. So I didn't really like people, and so they didn't kind of like me back. So in college, I started learning a little bit more about personal development. I started to like people a bit more, and they started to like me a bit more back. And so I was like, oh, this is different. And I really got deep into personal development. And now I find people really amazing and fascinating. I appreciate people a lot. And I usually get along with people about everywhere I go. And so it's amazing how much of a difference that we can make in our own lives. When we start seeing people different, we give them a different label. We start creating different expectations of people. When we expect them to act well and to do well, they usually do. The opposite is also true, right? If you have someone who doesn't like you, and that person really seems to not like, maybe they come up to your face and they say, "I don't like you." And then it's so easy to be like, "Oh, well, I don't like you either." And then it's so easy to be like, "Well, if you don't like me, then I'm not going to act in ways that are going to make you like me very much." And so it's so easy to mirror back what people are giving to you. But I remember I had a tennis coach a long time ago, and he said to me that the easiest shot to make in tennis, I don't know if any of you guys play any sports or played tennis before, but the easiest shot to hit in tennis is the one that's hit to you. So if someone hits a really fast cross-court shot, the easiest shot to hit back is a fast cross-court shot. If someone hits a moon ball to you, where it goes way up in the air, the easiest shot to hit back is a moon ball right back. If someone hits like a little small shot, the easiest one to hit back is a little chip back to them. But he said the real masters of the game, they can hit back something completely different than was hit toward them. And so if we want, so what we want to do is we want to hit the shot toward where we want it to go, not based on what was hit to us. So if someone's a bit negative toward us and we respond positively, then we can start changing that. And because everybody wants to feel good, we can start drawing them up into feeling good, and we can build a lot of bridges that way. Because people are experiencing all kinds of things in life, and so if we can see them positively, if we can feel good when they're around, um, people are gonna like you. People are gonna enjoy. They're gonna trust you. They're gonna know, like, and trust you a lot more. So for your professional relationships, know, like, and trust, right? That's something you hear a lot in the entrepreneurial um, world. People buy from you if they know, like, and trust you. So the more I think that we can be genuine and feel positive and to expect positive from people, we can benefit a lot of people around us and have a lot more um, of a good impact on our world. So let's go ahead, and we got two more points I want to hit on before we move to the next next section, next part of this whole thing, finish the presentation. All right. So effective communication and conflict resolution. So all strong relationships have good communication. And a lot of communicating happens because we're kind of on the same wavelength. And so people who are in similar emotional states are able to communicate a lot more effectively, even understanding each other without having to say a lot of words. But not everybody's going to be on your same wavelength. And so we want to employ a few things that can be really effective. So things like active listening, of course, are really good. We want to listen, not just to respond, but to actually hear people. But that's probably something we've heard before. We, of course, want to use things like I statements. I feel, I think, especially in professional settings, it can have such a massive difference. But of course, disagreements are inevitable. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be problems sometimes. It's only natural. So that's where conflict resolution skills come in. So of course, we want to approach things with open minds, compassion, but we kind of know that already. But here's a couple quick things that can make a massive amount of difference. So most people, when they have a problem, so say you got a coworker and they need to give something to you for your job, or you have an employee, or you have it could be also your romantic partner. You need them to do something, but they haven't done it. So most people would say, hey, you haven't done this thing. And so the other person may feel like they're being attacked, or they might feel like they're perceived in a negative light, and it might make them defensive or react badly. But one really powerful technique, it's simple, but not everybody applies it, is to focus 100% on how you want it to be. So how do you want this talk to go? So say you're talking to your coworker and you need them to give you this thing. So instead of saying, hey, you didn't give me this thing you're supposed to give me, which makes them think, oh, I'm doing a bad job or whatever. And you say instead, hey, I have this client, so I have to finish this thing up. I want things to go really well. How can we move this forward? Because I want things to go really well with this client. I want our relationship to be really good also. And you do a great job, by the way. And so if we focus 100% on how we want it to be in the conversation, You can, even in problematic situations, you can even improve your relationship during conflict. So instead of conflict having a negative impact on your relationship because of something you both need different things, you can enhance it based on how you treat them during those situations. So, and we do that by focusing 100% on how we want it to be. You can even use visualization. This has been really powerful. I remember I had some important talks I had to do with a partner in the past. And when I just stumbled into the talk, it didn't go nearly as well as when I started picturing it the way I wanted it to go and be. It is a powerful effect because you can have a talk turn out radically different if you start seeing it the way you want it to be. So really powerful, but so simple that many people will not use it. So I really encourage you to use it because it's amazing. Another massive tip I can give for conflict resolution. So if you have problems in a professional setting or with a partner, um, don't talk about anything important unless both of you are in a positive state. This can save relationships, just as one tip. So if something's important, it's really best to talk about it when you're both in a positive state because it's far more likely for you to find a win-win in the situation that way. Far more likely. And so they won't feel attacked. So really by combining these two conflict resolution techniques, you can have massively different um, interactions with people and with important people, and make those tough conversations be so much easier and go your way much more. All right, so this is the last one. So quick question, and you guys can share in the chat if you like. It requires a little bit of radical honesty. Let's talk about self-esteem. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most amount of self-esteem you can have and 1 being the lowest, what is the, how many of you have had 5 or less in self-esteem before? So for me, I've been at 1, right? The lowest. I thought my self-esteem super low at a 1. So go ahead and let us know. And of course, it doesn't have to be that way because self-esteem, self is really the key word in self-esteem. Self-esteem, self-value, the value we give ourselves. So it's been said, and I think this is a great quote, that we teach others how to treat us. Because the one thing that's in common with all of our relationships is us. Oh, someone said, yeah, they've had less than 5. Of course. And it's super common, super common. I would say even most people at some point in their lives have felt less than 5. I certainly have. So I'll share a quick story before we start wrapping things up. So when I was growing up, I really struggled with low self-esteem, and I felt like a misfit. I felt like I wasn't like the other people around. I was pretty dorky, and I had a lot of negativity around me. And so a lot of my interactions when I talked to people reflected this. So a lot of people avoided me. I had a good amount of bullying. Even my teachers kind of bullied me. I just had this really strong cloud of negativity going on. And it was as though they were just mirroring back to me my own lack of self-love, my own lack of respect. And I didn't realize at that time that our relationship with ourselves sets the tone for all relationships in our life. And this goes so deep. But my life really took a radical turn when I talked about this a little bit before I moved to New York City for college. And I had a professor that really changed my life and got me into personal development. And I started getting kind of a ray of sunshine and a lot of the darkness that had gone on in my life. It wasn't all dark, but I had a lot of dark clouds in my life. And so I started to change my life by changing what I was thinking. and thinking more positively about myself and the people around me. And the way that people treated me was so different. It was like night and day. So I started treating myself better, and other people started treating me completely differently. And so before, I kind of felt like everywhere I went, everyone was kind of negative toward me. Um, but then it totally switched to where I was experiencing a lot of kindness from random people quite often, and from people who were in my life. And I attracted a totally different set of friends. And, a lot of my family members started treating me totally differently. I remember when I was a kid, I was like, felt like I was the bottom of my family. And then now, like, when I go to Christmas, I feel like I'm like this weird star of my family out of all the people in it. And it's wild how big of a difference it can create. And so personal development really changed my life. And so as we develop more self-respect, more self-love, more self-care, more appreciative attitude toward ourselves, it really makes a massive difference in our life, but especially our relationships. So if you guys are going to take away anything from this presentation, you can create a massive difference in your life. A lot of people say that massive difference, life-changing, but it's not really that life-changing. This is life-changing, and I really mean that. It can really, really change your life. So I just want to leave that with you guys, that if you treat yourself completely differently in your own mind, other people will begin treating you very differently as well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So we have a little bit of a conclusion. So one, all relationships are beneficial. Next, we talk about mirror neurons. So people feel what you feel. And so the better you feel, the better they will feel around you. Next, we talk about how expectation influences behavior. The more positively we expect people to act, the more positively they will. Then we're talking about how everyone wants to feel good. So the better you feel, and the better they feel being around you, and the more they like you. Also, the more you like them, the more they like you back. Next, we talk about a few conflict resolution strategies, how you want to be in a positive state when you talk about something important, and how you also, next we want to end different conflict resolutions strategies. And then next we talk about self-treatment. How you treat yourself is reflected by other people. And so that makes a massive difference in our relationships. So yeah, thank you so much. If you want to reach out to me, you can message me on Instagram. We're going to do a little Q&A if you guys have some questions. Also, you can email me at zachariahdevelopment@gmail, or you can check out my website, zachbourne.com. All right.
I think there was already some questions before. I jotted down several things on my side, but I think that Lokesh had said something about being more focused. Perhaps, I don't know if you want to type it or you want to come back to your original question, Lokesh. And then I think also Juan had a question as well about how to make first impressions, if I remember correctly. So why don't we do ladies first? Yeah, because since Zach has been presenting all this time. So I'll let Juan just to repeat her question again, please.
Question.
Okay.
You thank you for your presentation, Zach. It was really good.
Thank you everyone for being here.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned that the expectation influence the behavior of other people,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
means that we also have to care on what people think of us. Like if what I understand is like if people think of you badly, like they expect you to be bad, and your behavior will be bad as well. I mean, it's the other way around. What I'm talking. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So And you'll notice this too, that some people will draw out like the nice side of you, and some people, it seems like, they really can be very triggering for you. And so usually those people that we're triggered by, they have a negative expectation of us, and so they're drawing that out of us. But you don't have to, it's just an influence. You don't have to give into it. And you'll notice that the majority of the time too, the people you like will like you back. So obviously, like your best friends usually like you, right? And people you have problems with that you don't like so much, they usually don't like you back that much. It's not 100% of the time, but it's a very high percentage if you just average that out. And so you don't have to be taken over by someone else's behavior. And you can't control what someone else thinks. So, but the interesting thing is, as you start seeing them better and appreciating them more and seeing them positively, a lot of times you can have a massive impact on the way that they see you. And so I would just focus, not worrying about too much about what other people think. So that old saying, what you think of me is none of my business, and which is true. But the fascinating thing is, as you're really appreciating and liking other people, a lot of times you don't even notice. If you're doing it really well, you're not even noticing that they are thinking negatively about you. Like it's not even on your radar. Like it's on a different vibe. And so it often doesn't even come up with you, which is really fascinating. But yeah, you will notice that people will draw out different sides of you in general, and you're drawing out different sides of other people. And so I would just not worry about what other people are thinking and just focus on yourself and what you think about them and how you feel toward them. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I don't have to care much, but just appreciate them, and and I don't care. And also, another question you mentioned about visualizations before you talk with people. How do you visualize?
Well, first I would ask yourself, okay, how do I want this to go? Right? So you can ask yourself, like, how do I want this to go? I'm just gonna adjust this real quick. So if you ask yourself, how do I want things to go in this interaction? It can make a massive difference. So first you figure out how you want it to go. So if it's a romantic partner and you think to yourself, okay, well, I need to talk with them about something important. I want it to go this way. A lot of times people are worried about how the other person is thinking or how they're going to react instead of thinking about how they want them to react and how they want them to go. And a lot of times our subconscious, will come up with good ways to solve problems just by getting clear about how we want it to go. And then once we're clear on how we want it to go, we can start seeing it going that way. And so if you can spend, a chunk of time feeling as if it's already gone exactly the way you want it to go, it can make such a massive difference. And so I've used this to incredible success, and you can really change the outcome. Sometimes you think someone's going to react this completely negatively, and if you really are good at visualizing the way you want it to be, it's amazing what a difference it can make. And then you kind of shocked, thought, oh, wow, they actually reacted totally different than I originally thought. After I did this visualization, it really changed things. So it can have a massive impact. Of course, I would spend a few minutes, especially if you meditate. After meditation, just think about how you want it to go. Feel as if it's already gone that way. And it'll give a really clear signal to your subconscious. And a lot of times you'll get solutions on how to make it go that way. And it starts getting your vibe pointed in that direction, your expectation also pointing in that direction. So the longer you can visualize it, the better you can feel it going, the more success you'll have with it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you, Coach.
Lokesh, you have a question that you want to repeat to Zach?
Yeah, I think that one is not as important as I have another question.
Yeah, give it to us.
Okay, yeah, because you mentioned that all relationships are useful or whatever the term you use, but I believe, I mean, we can agree to disagree, but I believe there's some relationships that are toxic. Like, I think there's two situations, right? One is, let's say, somebody who lives with us, or maybe he or she is a family member, and they're being toxic or narcissistic, which I've had a couple of times before,
Mhm.
where there's no option to, you just have to live. You can check out, like the way I used to do is like just check out, as in I do my own things and let them do. So that's one situation. The other is I can easily get out, right? I'm talking to somebody, he or she may be a friend or just met them, and I see some red flags that either they're toxic or there's no resonance between the two of us, right? We don't kind of talk the same language. Then it's easy for me to just walk out of that relationship. But I want to know what you mean by all relationships are
Are
useful.
beneficial.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. And so actually I had something happen to me that's very similar to what you described in the first example. So I grew up with a family member who was very toxic, right? So they rarely said nice things about me, and they tried to humiliate me a lot growing up, in front of other people and things like that. Um, but and so part of it too is but and at that time it made my self-esteem very low, and so it felt like that toxic experience, you'd say, oh well, this is clearly not beneficial. um, but I think you also have to take that next step to use those relationships as fuel, because without that toxic family member, I would never be into personal development, giving this presentation right now. And it helped me to appreciate happiness so much more. It helped me to appreciate creating my own self-worth so much more. You have to take that relationship and use it as fuel to benefit you. If you don't do that, it's not benefiting you. So you have to use it to benefit you, if that makes sense. So yeah, so say you have that toxic family member, they create a lot of unhappiness in you. Okay, bam. Now you want more happiness. That's a benefit. Two, it helps you to know what a toxic relationship is. Like, okay, this family member did this thing, and so it was, um, it affected me negatively. Okay, this is not what I want for the future. It also changes the way, for me, I didn't want a partner like that. And so that helped me to create much better relationships. It helped me uh, to pursue personal development so I can help people to, take the bounce, so to speak. Because for every negative, there's it's like a wave. For every negative, there's some lesson, some benefit to be gained. And a lot of people are not getting the benefit out of those relationships. And so what I want people to do is start getting the benefit out of those negative relationships. Let them help you get clear on what you want, to focus in that direction, to create relationships like that. Let that fuel you into more personal development, into growing as a person more. Let it fuel you into um, appreciating people who are different, and knowing what a good relationship is. Let all of that push you into the right direction. And so when we know what we don't want, now all of a sudden we know what we do want. And so you'll notice that a lot of people who have changed the world had a lot of like really negative experiences growing up, or had like very trying things happen. Um, and so they were able to take that experience and to use it, and you still can now as an adult, use it to help push you toward where you want to go. And so we have to take that extra step to make that beneficial by getting having it get clear on what we want to create. All right, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I think yeah, there's a point that comes then that you have to make a decision. Not you. I mean, I have to make a decision that okay, I'm done. Right? There has to be some point where we have to say that I'm done with this relationship. So that's where sometimes it's tricky because
Well, you need to
I'm
choose
also
yourself,
yeah.
you need to choose yourself, and some, family stuff is tricky. But listen, at the end of the day, you got to choose yourself. You got to take care of yourself first. You got to treat yourself well. And if someone is constantly being a negative influence in your life, you don't need to be around them, even if they're family. So, and I understand um, sometimes it's tough to do. And, but at the end of the day, we have to choose ourselves. We have to um, set clear boundaries within ourselves and just be around people who are benefiting our life and have a positive influence in our life. Can make just a massive difference.
Yeah, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Zach.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, you're very welcome. Of course. Yeah. Do we have any
Hi,
other questions?
yeah, hi, Erica. I think you came in a little bit later and Tama. Just curious if you have any questions. At the start of this session, Zach had mentioned that we're touching both on personal as well as professional. And I need to find out if you guys have any questions. If you're in a space that's loud and you don't want to turn on sound, you can type out your question in the chat as well.
Yeah, let us know. Go ahead and type in the chats, or don't be shy about jumping on. I'll be happy to answer any questions that I can. I just want to help you guys as much as possible. Whatever we can do to improve your life. It doesn't even have to be directly about relationships. It could be about personal development or whatever is going on for you. You're very welcome.
I just wanted to, the other thing I learned, I think as a young person about relationships, because I also had difficult relationships growing up,